I'm excited to bring this to you today. It should be fun. We're going to talk about protein and amino acids. It's kind of an interesting time in the world, isn't it? We've got balloons and UFOs. We've got all kinds of things going on in our world right now. And perhaps our world is really a battle for our minds, for what we think about and where our attention goes and what we consider and how our impulsivity, can and cannot rule us. So we fight a battle every day between our ears. And the thing that can help us, the full armor of God, let's say, that we can put on, part of that is knowledge. So what I want to help you guys with is knowledge about how you work, knowledge, a deeper understanding of human function, of, how we work, and how we can optimize our human function. One thing that I'm pretty darn sure of is that God is a very good engineer. In fact, he's probably a perfect engineer, right? And so I don't think God would build a bad system. Now, to me, if you look at human function and kind of, how we operate right now, it's not perfect. It's far from that. I mean, we fail, we break, we're disease ridden, we're, consumed with disease, we're, none of us probably feel as good as we should or have the mood or energy that we should. Well, why is that, right? Because again, that's not the world God designed, not even close. And you can take this down to the science level. So every cell inside of you is always striving to be perfect, is always striving to achieve its perfect state and perfect function. And thereby, every single organ, because an organ is just a collection of cells, is always trying to strive towards perfect. That means your brain, your heart, your lungs, your stomach, everything in you is always trying to strive toward perfect and attain perfect function. So we as beings are always trying to achieve perfect function. Well, what holds us back? Well, we're going to talk about that. Again, this war is sort of a war for your body. We have an immune system, which is kind of our full armor of God, if you want to think about it that way. But we have an immune system which can guard us against invasion and, honestly, possession by bacterial things. Those bacterial things can affect the way we think. They can affect our impulsivity. They can affect your decision making. Toxoplasma gondii, if you want to go research something that does that, but many other bacteria do that. They have control of dopamine and serotonin. That's what affects your mind. So anyway, what we're about here at Neighborhood Nutrition, what I'm about is CHIP, what we're trying to do for Treat the Cause and for some nonprofits that we're trying to help with solutions around treating the cause, is to get you to understand this. So this war on disease, let's say, is more about just you understanding your immune system and understanding how your immune system works. So if you want to heal yourself of disease, the first thing that we have to do is understand how our immune system works. So how can we work with our body? How can we work with our body to be able to allow our bodies the maximum potential to be able to fight off disease, which again, in my mind, is bacteria and bacterial invasion, right? So a lot of things in our society, and you're going to see this throughout the course of this talk today, look like they're almost purposely designed to tear down our immune system, to make us an opportunistic host for bacteria. Now, I don't know why that would be. It fits a pharma business model, but it seems to be deeper and more spiritual than that. So, take that for what it's worth. But to me, what I'm doing today and what I do every Friday is I charge out into the spiritual realm and do battle. And you may not see it that way, but that's the way I see it. So anyway, hopefully it's beneficial to you on some level. So let's dive right in here to proteins. So on the surface, this sounds pretty dull and boring, doesn't it? Proteins and amino acids. Ha! By the end of this, I think you're going to be going, holy cow, are you kidding me, Chip? Proteins and amino acids are that important? You've heard me talk a lot about fats over the years, so the importance of omega-3s, dietary fats, all that. Yeah, this is equally as important. I'll be talking a lot about aminos in the future. And, honestly, a year ago, I didn't really realize all this. But, it's part of how you work, right? It's part of understanding how you work. So let's dive into it. So what is a protein? And this will also explain what is an amino acid. So a protein, all a protein is just a string or chain of amino acids, okay? So when you eat that steak, the protein in that steak is just a chain of amino acids that were left in the, muscle of that cow, at the time that it was killed. So basically protein is nothing more than just a string of amino acids. So that's super important to know because, again, we hear a lot about we need to eat proteins and, protein is super important and how much protein should I eat and what's the difference between a plant protein and a, meat protein? None. It's just amino acids, okay? The amino acids might look a little different in a meat protein versus a plant protein, but there is absolutely no difference. When you boil it down to constituents, a protein is just a string of amino acids. It doesn't matter whether a cow made it or a plant made it or you made it. Okay, so let's sort of dial this back a notch and look at, what do cells make, right? So what's the purpose of a cell? Well, we've talked a lot in the past about fuel for cells in the mitochondria, and that's fatty acids, right? So that's the gas. Well, what are the raw materials? What are the resources that a cell needs in order to be able to make things? And again, what is a cell trying to make and why? Well, cells make proteins, right? So DNA oozes out of a cell. You have RNA that's part of that. And in the ribosome, you have amino acids that come along and they basically pop into whatever code that is on the DNA to make proteins. And then proteins are used by your body to signal, to change things. They're used as, to do things inside of cells. So proteins are used all over our body and they're stored, so they're stored in our muscles and things like that. So proteins are super important, but again, they're just amino acids. Do I want to talk about any of this yet? No, not yet. Okay. All right, so this is actually how proteins are made. So within the ribosome of a cell, for some reason this is backwards, so you can kind of see the amino acids over there on the right, and they get pulled into the nucleus of a cell, and then as the RNA goes across, basically the different aminos get popped onto the RNA, and that creates, get coded by the RNA, and that creates the thing in the middle coming out there that's a protein. That's an amino acid chain called a protein, okay? So cells are trying to make proteins from amino acids. All right, so what do proteins, a symbol for amino acids, do? So what's the function of proteins? Well, certainly in your digestive tract, they help and facilitate chemical reactions. So you have a lot of chemical reactions that go on in your gut as you digest things. Amino acids are used for that. Amino acids are used to support muscles, and they're a big part of your muscle. So protein is muscle, muscle is protein. They provide support to the body, so they help with cellular structure, cellular function. Again, you can think of that as a muscle. They also are so what is a hormone? It's a protein built from amino acids, okay? What is a steroid? It might have some sugar in there, but it's also a protein, or can be a protein, built from amino acids. All right, so the other thing that they do is they move essential molecules around the body, so that's pretty important. So proteins will bind with fats or other molecules, metals, and move molecules in and out of the body, which is pretty important. And then they also support the regulation and expression of DNA and RNA. And the last thing that they do is they build antibodies. So if you've heard of IgG or IgE or other things like that, then those are built from protein. There's someone outside my window, interestingly. Not sure what they're doing, but anyway, sorry for the distraction there. I may have to tell them to stop doing what they're doing. Okay, anyway, I think that'll end soon. Sorry about that. So anyway, but these are what the proteins do that we're building in cells. So, super important that that happens. Steroids and hormones are built from or with proteins. So it's just, a lot of the functions of your body, again, are coming from proteins, which come from amino acids. Where does a cell get its amino acids? Well, this is important because it's not like fat. So fat is stored in adipose tissue. A cell gets its amino acids, and it'll have some amino acids inside the cell, but it mainly gets its amino acids from what they call the extracellular matrix. Now, why this is important is this is stuff that's, in sort of blood or lymph, outside of the cell, right? So a cell is looking outside of itself to pull in amino acids as raw materials to build things. So if you've got a factory, you need fuel. Again, that's coming from fatty acids or glucose. And you need raw materials, which are coming from amino acids that are in the extracellular matrix. And it's super important that they're in the extracellular. And you certainly pull them in, and you pull them in to do things. You pull them into the factory, you pull them into the nucleus of the cell. But it's about your cell has a sensing mechanism to sense if there's enough amino acids in the extracellular matrix to be able to do its work. So you're not going to crank up your factory and waste a bunch of fuel if there isn't enough raw materials to be able to do what you need to do in the factory, right? So cells have a sensing mechanism to sense and see, hey, are there enough aminos out there? And if there are not, again, it's either going to not make what it needs to make, it's going to kind of misfire, or it's going to shut down and not do anything. But the important thing to note is stuff that's in the extracellular matrix is dietary, okay? So what you just ate, again, will eventually end up within 4 or 5 hours or so, because that's part of what the 4 or 5 hours does when you eat, but will end up in your extracellular matrix as resources for your little cellular factories. Pretty freaking important, right? Okay, so I'm an old computer programmer. I'm a old member of Anonymous even. So I'm an Anon from way back. Although I have a white hat on. A lot of that movement got taken over in the early 2000s by not so good people. But anyway, the one term that you learn when you're a computer programmer is garbage in, garbage out. So again, if you have bad code or you put bad data into a really good program, it's only as good as what you put in it. Well, the same thing goes for us in our food that we eat. So, garbage in is going to give us garbage out, and garbage out is going to look a lot like disease. So what is garbage in, or what should we understand about this? Well, again, if you're not eating the proper amino acids, then your cells aren't going to work. Your little factories are not going to be able to make the things that they need to make. Again, God is always trying to strive us toward perfect function. Again, perfect function does not look like disease. So the fact that we're diseased means that we're misfiring in these areas. Again, they certainly could be outside influence caused by bacteria, viruses, and other things. But those only happen because we weaken our immune system through not eating the right stuff. Okay, hopefully you guys are seeing the picture. Garbage in, garbage out. So garbage in results in a weakened immune system, which results in more bacteria and more funk for your body to have to deal with. All right, what are the essential amino acids? Again, you can kind of see them there. I'm not going to read them to you, but the ones on the right of the left graphic, are the essential amino acids. So we have to have those. So again, we need to pay attention to what those are, how much of those things are in the things that we're eating. If there are things on the essential list that we're not eating, just like we're not eating omega-3s, and we all need to eat more omega-3s, then we need to eat these things, all right? If we eat the essentials, we kind of build the non-essentials, and kind of things just happen, right? For the most part, I'm still researching this. I don't believe what they tell us, right? So I'm going to figure it out on my own. But we certainly need the essentials. The non-essentials, cysteine we need. That's part of methionine. So we'll get there, but we'll come out with a list, and we'll probably come out with a supplement package, basically essential amino acid, protein powder or something like that soon. But I'm not quite done with exactly what I think we need in it yet. So when I'm done with that, we'll do that. Important to note, so look at this, 60% of your water, or of your body is water. It's actually a little more than that. It's the exact same ratio of water on planet Earth, which is pretty cool. There's probably something to that, actually, now that I think about that. But amino acids represent about 20% of you, okay? So pretty significant amount of what makes you up is amino acids. And again, pretty dang important that we get the inputs right so we kind of have the right outputs, right? And none of us are paying attention to this right now. I mean, if you're a bodybuilder, an extreme athlete, or something like that, you may be kind of paying attention to this, but not in the way I want you to. Let's just put it that way. I want you to really begin to pay attention to this. And again, we'll be beating this drum like we beat the flat drum for the last 6 years. So we'll be also now beating the amino acid drum because it's super important. Okay, table on the left is RDA of how much you gotta have, okay? So milligrams per kilogram per day. Again, somebody's gonna have to do some math here, but you get enough, let's say in a steak, you're gonna get enough methionine for you for that day, okay? But do you eat a steak every day? And what happens if you don't eat meat on a day? Again, are you getting these essential amino acids? And this is a daily thing, boys and girls. It's not like you store these up. That's why I brought up extracellular matrix, is because this is only as good as your last meal. So if you look at the stuff over here on the left, you need all of that every meal. You need all of that every meal, okay? All of that every meal. That's super important. You don't need to get a little bit of it today and a little bit of it tomorrow and a little bit of it next week. No, all of it every meal. And again, God's a perfect engineer. If we kind of have the perfect inputs, you're going to have a perfect result. So you're going to live longer, be more disease-free, have a happier life, be better able to handle anxiety, mental stuff, all of this stuff we suffer from now, the diabetes and autoimmunes and all that crap. Again, this is the way that we mitigate those, because we give our body what it needs and our body heals itself. Like God intended, the way he engineered you to. Every cell in your body will regenerate. We just got to know the ins and outs, right? The garbage ins and the garbage outs is what we're doing now. We need the proper ins and proper outs. So deconstructing this system that God built for us is super important. And again, hopefully we're all the place where, pharma ain't going to do this for us, boys and girls. And it looks like, pharma for the most part controls curriculum in educational institutions. So you're not going to get a lot of this in your educational institution. You're going to get taught about amino acids, but you're not going to get taught about how you work and how critical this is to your function, okay? So, do we need to pay attention to aminos? Endoplasmic reticulum stress can be induced by, this is from a research study, so I can do this on purpose to somebody, but you don't want to do it on purpose, but it's just to show what happens. So you can induce this with this drug that I can't pronounce, and you can induce it for 5 hours. Again, this other drug inhibits the transport of proteins from the endoplasmic reticulum to the Golgi, and induces retrograde protein transport from the Golgi apparatus to the endoplasmic reticulum. So basically what they do is they create a situation where your endoplasmic reticulum cannot get the aminos that it needs. This leads to accumulation of unfolded proteins in the endoplasmic reticulum. Now, again, if you're a scientist, you might be going, oh, wow. But if you're not a scientist, you'll be going, why are you telling us this, Chip? Wow, this is too much in the weeds. Too much science, right? Okay, if you have let's say, a buildup of unfolded and undealt with proteins in your endoplasmic reticulum, just like in this situation, guess what? Cancer, autism, disease, okay? So it's pretty important that we understand this. And again, how does this happen? It's just sort of resources aren't there. The resources aren't there to be able to feed the factory, to be able to build the, things that you need. And so the factory basically begins to have stress and begins to malfunction. And when that happens, that causes disease. Again, it's not as God intended, and God has a way to fix it, and your body has a way to fix it. We just need to understand the inputs, and this cellular system will begin to right itself on its own, okay? What about inflammation and allergies? Now, I could do a whole chip talks on this. I mean, we could spend an hour literally on just talking about inflammation, allergies, amino acids, and histamines. So this will ring true to a lot of you guys if you have an autoimmune disease, if you have something, a disease where it appears that your body is fighting you and fighting you trying to heal from it. This will make a lot of sense. And again, your body can be put in a state where that happens, but there's always ways out of states and loops and sort of situations where your body's stuck, let's say. So there's always a way to get, unstuck. Again, God is a perfect engineer. We just have to understand the system. And as we understand the system, we'll understand how to unstick you. All right. So inflammation, allergies, and aminos. How does this work? Well, histamine is how you respond to an injury, an allergy, or your kind of first inflammatory thing. So cells will release histamine and then inflammation will happen. If it's an injury, you need the inflammation to protect that area that's injured, and then you'll kind of start repairing it. If it's an allergy, again, it's a situation where you need to inflame to basically protect yourself from whatever that thing is that's insulting you. But histamine is the way our body does this, okay? So if you're chronically inflamed, if you're chronically infected, you're going to have a lot of histamine. And I see this in a lot of people. Again, if you've watched the show before, you've seen me show thermal images of people who are bacterial infected. This happens a lot. So again, most of us are dealing with, let's say, a lot of extra histamine that we potentially don't need to. So as we understand how to kind of work with God's system, this will go away. But right now it's an issue for a lot of us because we're not working with God's system. We're working with man's system, which is McDonald's and eat 6 times a day and drink a lot of energy drinks and all that kind of stuff, right? So, but anyway, histamine is something we need to be aware of and pay attention to. If you have mast cell issues, so if you've been told you have a mast cell disease or you have overactive immune system, again, histamine would be what is the cause of that. Histamine is absolutely involved in chronic inflammation. High histamine biosynthesis and content have been found in different human tumors, including melanoma, colon, breast cancer, as well as experimental cancer models. Histamine is elevated in autism. You'll notice I'm kind of focusing on diseases, kind of focusing on cancer and autism. That's on purpose because we want to kind of go with the most severe stuff. But again, if you have a disease and you look at the pathology of your disease, more than likely histamine is involved because, again, everything is bacterial. They cause an insult that causes cells to go, oh, I have an insult, an injury, I must release histamine. So almost everything will tie back to histamine. It doesn't really matter what it is. How do you get rid of it in your body? Well, that's super important. I mean, you don't want it circulating around. It's an inflammatory. It will cause chronic inflammation. It'll cause a lot of problems. So you have an enzyme. You just have one, which is regrettable, that it's, expressed in your gut. It's expressed, inside of our cell. Is it in the liver too? This may say. No, again, I'm not going to read you. This is just from a study, and I'm showing you a picture of what this enzyme looks like. But this enzyme is super important, right? So if you have let's say you have an autoimmune, again, you're going to be dealing with a lot of histamine in your body, and this enzyme has to function properly. Otherwise, you will be overly chronically inflamed. You will stay more inflamed than you should. You'll have trouble, with the circulating histamine that you still have that you can't eliminate. Well, what blocks this enzyme? Gosh, alcohol blocks it. So again, if you drink and have allergies, every drink you take are helping your allergies, not hurting your allergies, basically hurting your body deal with the allergies. Every drink that you take will hurt your chronic inflammation. Every drink that you take will not help your body to heal. It will hurt your body's ability to heal for this reason. Black tea, turns out, does the same thing. Mate tea does the same thing. Green tea. So green tea has a lot of good properties. I recommend people drink a lot of green tea, but I'm going to kind of rethink that a little bit. And I'm not sure what in the green tea blocks this, but I'll get kind of the bottom of that. But resveratrol is something really good in tea that pushes some good buttons inside of us called AMPK, but it also may push this button. And it may be why it's associated with oxidative stress and things like that. Energy drinks also push or shut off this enzyme that helps us deal with histamine. So again, we need to be aware of these things. Certainly, if you're battling something, you need to stay away from all of these things. If you have disease or chronic disease, these are things that will hurt you, not help you. Okay, so let's go to the logic place. Okay, we've got a few more slides here. So what happens as I begin to, we recommend intermittent fasting a lot, right? So as I begin to eat less frequently, do I need to be more concerned with what I eat? Yes. I mean, I'm a mathematician, so that's just statistics. If I eat this much food over the course of a day, I've got more statistical probability of hitting all my nutrient needs because I've got big volume. If I eat this much food over the course of the day, my statistics go down. So I better be way, way, way more concerned with what I'm eating. So intentional eating, right? I'm getting ready to do a blog on this, so I'll talk a lot more about this. But we need to be way more concerned with, what we're eating as we're eating kind of less food and in a smaller amount of time. So we have to eat the fats and it looks like everything's about balance, boys and girls. So we have to eat the fats in balance. We have to eat the amino acids in balance. We probably have to. I'm not sure about vitamins and micronutrients, so I'm still researching these. We need some of these, but our bodies also sort of make and reclaim a lot of these. So it will get to kind of this perfect diet, within a month or so. But I'm working pretty hard on that now. You certainly do need some vitamins. I mean, we need retinoic acid, which is vitamin A. We use all over the place. It's a big signaling mechanism. It's in an embryo, so things that you need from the time before you were born are pretty important to pay attention to. Obviously, vitamin D, we all know about. Vitamin D really helps protect us from bacteria and bacterial invasion. It's a big mechanism in our immune system, and most of us don't have enough. So, why is it that almost everything in our environment, our society is just focused on tearing away and ripping down our immune system? It's almost like it's intentional that we should be invaded by these pathogens, isn't it? Yeah. So, some questions. Can disease be addressed just by changing aminos? It's a good question. It's looking like it can. Is disease caused partially by improper or missing aminos? Good question. Looking like it can be. If we intermittent fast, how important does amino acid supplementation become? Pretty dang important, because again, if we're not eating if we eat one meal a day, and I don't eat the proper amount and ratios of amino acids, then in my extracellular matrix for the next time I eat, I don't have the right stuff for my factories. I don't have the right raw materials to be able to build the stuff I need. It's pretty important, right? Okay, can allergies and mast cell diseases be addressed by diet and behavior? Well, hopefully, again, I think you've seen that certainly at a top level, you can do things to help your body fight these and deal with these and you can do things to hurt your body's ability to do that. So we want to help our body. We want to work with God. We want to kind of go in that system. We want to understand that system and work with nature, if you want to look at it that way. And again, higher power, if you want to look at it that way. But, to me, God is God. Can severe diseases like cancer and autism be impacted by changes to aminos? Ha! Yes! And we will prove that soon with data. Data is king, right? So absolutely, we will begin to look at these things and watch these things within our group of people that we're trying to help and see how they change their genetic expressions, their thermal profiles, all those type things. So here's some interesting answers, to those questions. I kind of went through the answers a little bit, but one of the really interesting things right now that's happening in autism circles is a carnivore diet or an all-meat diet. So again, if you look at what meat is, it's just protein, which is just amino acids. So supplementing with amino acids is in the form of meat is really helping a lot of autistic kiddos, okay? So back to what we were talking about, as we understand the factories, what the factories need as raw materials in order to produce the stuff we need to run us, those are pretty important things. Now, we've known about this stuff for, gosh, guys, we've known about all this, I don't know, since the 20s, the 30s. Most of the stuff that I look at, is we've known about since the 20s and 30s, certainly since the 50s. Well, why isn't there an all hands on deck effort to fix these problems? I mean, if my goal is to help you and my goal is to sort of give you the necessary things that you need to become the perfect you, then why am I not telling you all this stuff? Why isn't this on every billboard and broadcast through every hospital? And why aren't we all about trying to teach people what we need to eat and about eating frequency? It's mystifying, isn't it? I mean, I'm sure you'll reach the same conclusions I do. So we've got to take care of ourselves. I, need to take care of myself. And as I learn things, I need to try to help you take care of yourself. Similarly, as you learn things, you need to communicate to me and try to help me take care of myself. I don't know everything. I know a lot about this area, but, I don't know how to build a house. I don't know how to, grow food. So we all need to begin to help each other and help each other with what we know and our knowledge. I had a really interesting call. I had a business call, but it was a business call yesterday morning, and it was with a gentleman who's very successful and, has done a lot of cool stuff in India. But he said one of the things that he's trying to do is, get away from the concept of money. I don't need to exchange money with you to do things. We can barter for things. We can do things in a give and take in a share environment. So, hopefully science is headed that way. There's no reason to guard knowledge. Knowledge is of God. If I sort of learn something before you do, then I'm almost responsible to swing you up. So anyway, blah, 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 blah. So that's it today for Chip Talks. Thank you guys. Appreciate you tuning in. Hopefully you learned something. We'll see you next week.